Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Lynn Loves You. I'm your host, Lynn Broughton, and I'm just delighted you've joined me today for the very first, but certainly not the last, of my own gratitude videos. I will be discussing times when people so wonderfully and so unexpectedly showed up and showed me such kindness and favor and generosity, and in one case, literally saved my life. And I do mean literally. So I have three stories to tell, and I'm going to rank them from number 3 to 2 to number 1. And I'm sure you can guess which one that is. So at number 3, sorry, got a little tongue tied. At number 3, I want to thank all of you watching who reached out to me multiple times when I tweeted that my anxiety disorder had really hammered me. And then when the medication I was taking, because I was taking too much for 9 days straight, made me feel very, very sick. And I stopped making videos, virtually vanished from Twitter. All of you who really reached out to me then, thank you, and thank you. I love you all very, very much. And now that I'm so much better, because the medication that I'm on now seems to really be working very well. I can see what might have happened. And I know that anxiety is a medical condition, and so it's unpredictable, and it doesn't need any outside stimuli to get worse all of a sudden. But, type 2 diabetes, which I also have, is also a medical condition, and it's unpredictable. But I know if I eat too many carbs in one day, my blood sugar is really going to spike. And I think that's comparable to what happened with the anxiety. And I was going through there were some major stressors that were bothering me. And I was putting a lot of unreasonable pressure on myself about some things. And I think that was basically the magic bullet to make me feel so like I was coming out of my skin. But those days seem to be going behind me now. And again, thank you all. I love you. Mwah. So the second story on my list occurred in December of 2015. And at the time, I worked for a major retail pharmacy chain, very well-known retail pharmacy chain, I should say. And I worked in the cosmetics department, mostly. And I also worked often in the photo department and on the floor, doing resets, building end caps, side panels, working trucks, hanging sale tags, hanging Mylars, doing inventory, helping customers find what they needed, et cetera, et cetera. And I really loved that job. I loved it so much. I worked there for years, and it was really very fulfilling. I love this job more, and it's even more fulfilling. But I did love working there. And on this particular evening, I had clocked out, and before I could go, I had to pick up my medication. So I got in the line at the pharmacy, got to the front, ran my debit card, and my card was declined. And I could not figure why, because I knew exactly how much money I had on it. And it was more than enough to cover the cost of that medication. So I told him just to take the next person in line, and I went to the front of the store and called the 866 number, checked my balance. Sure enough, I had $144 on that card, which I knew. And the medication only cost $12, and I felt like I was rich. I only had like a week till payday, and I knew I was in good shape, or at least I thought so, but I certainly could buy that prescription. By then, I had figured out what I had done wrong, which I had mistyped my pen. So I turned around to head back to the pharmacy. And that's when I noticed this young gentleman. I didn't realize he was following me, though. But when I say following me, I mean with good intent. So it was a good thing. So I got to the front of the store and left the front of the store, headed back to the pharmacy, got in line again. And all of a sudden, here he came and he shoved a $100 bill into my hand and said, "Hey, brother, I saw what happened. Use this to buy your medicine." And then he turned around, tried to walk away. So I threw my arm around his shoulder because I didn't, of course, it had been a mistake and I didn't want him to give me that money when I actually didn't need it. So I told him, "Thank you, thank you, thank you," probably 30 times. And I explained my mistake and why I didn't need the money, but again, how much I appreciated it. And he wouldn't take the money back. And he finally said, "Brother, I'm trying to bless you. Please don't take that from me." So I thought, okay, I won't do that. So I kept the money, or at least I pretended to. I'll explain that in a minute. And we spoke for a few minutes, and I'm just checking my timer on the video so that I don't go over my camera time. That just happened actually recently. This is attempt number 2 to record this video because I went past a time limit I didn't know existed, which was 27 minutes. And the remaining 5 or 6 minutes were separate. So I don't want that to happen a second time. But I digress. Back to Rusty and our conversation. Rusty, by the way, was his name. I introduced myself. He introduced himself. And his name was Rusty. And he hugged me, told me he loved me. And I told him I loved him back. And I meant it. I don't think it's unreasonable to love somebody like Rusty, or even difficult. I think it's actually quite easy to love somebody like Rusty, who's basically an earthbound angel. Then he walked away. I never saw him again. I went to the overnight shift leader and I told her what happened. And we were both so touched and choked up. And I handed her the money. At this company, if an employee is on the clock and a customer gives the employee money, unsolicited money, like as a tip or what have you, or if an employee finds money on the floor or what have you, they have to turn it into the manager, who puts it in the safe, and it remains there for 10 days. And if the customer doesn't change their mind and doesn't come back to get it, the employee gets to keep it. And I think that's a great policy. I was off the clock, so technically I could have just left with it, but I wasn't going to keep it. It just didn't feel right to me. So I turned it in and I gave it to the store. And Rusty, being the prince that he was, didn't come back for it. So I want to mention that he is the catalyst for this series of videos. He inspired them. I think about what he did every day. Retail, where you deal with a lot of people every single day, is wonderful. I loved it. But sometimes you come across people who might be 60 some odd years old, 65, and they revert to their terrible twos when you can't take one of their coupons or a dozen of them or 25 of them. People like Rusty help to, in fact, Rusty himself really did, helped restore and maintain my faith in people. I've always loved people, but sometimes they're much. Sometimes I'm much. He wasn't. I don't ever imagine that he ever is too much. So again, Rusty, in the off chance you see this, thank you again. And I love you, buddy. So at number 1, and yes, you guessed it, it's the time that my sister Cheryl and my roommate literally saved my life Yes, literally, because I was literally this close to dying. I was almost dead when they found me. So got to check the timer again, just 1 second. So this occurred on June the 28th of 2021, and it was a Monday, and I had a doctor's appointment. What I didn't know I also had was a severe case of diabetic ketoacidosis that was actually sending me into respiratory failure. I knew that weekend I didn't feel right. My vision was bothering me, and I was breathing very heavily, but I chalked that up to just nerves about the doctor's appointment. I hate going to the doctor. And every time I have a doctor's appointment, I really do get especially anxious. And I thought that I was just fighting off a panic attack, but I was wrong. At some point between Sunday night and Monday morning, I rolled off my bed to the floor unconscious and started having seizures. And I mean, I started having a lot of seizures. And so on Monday afternoon, when I didn't show up for the doctor's appointment and I didn't call beforehand to cancel it, they called me. And of course, I couldn't hear my phone because I was on the floor, unconscious, having seizures. So they called my emergency contact, who is my sister Cheryl. And I never changed it to my roommate once he moved in, because at the time he worked overnights, and some days he wouldn't get home until like 4 a.m. So I did everything within my power never to disturb him unless I absolutely had to, so that he could sleep. So left it at Cheryl. They called her. She called me, I'm sure multiple times on the way to my house. And of course, I didn't answer for before mentioned reasons. So she raced to our house, got there, started pounding on the door, the front door, and screaming our names. Then she went to my bedroom window and started knocking on that door and screaming my name. And then she returned to the front door, knocked on it, and screamed our names much more loudly. And that woke my roommate. He opened the door. She told him what was going on and that she couldn't get a hold of me. And they went to my bedroom door and opened it. And there I was on the floor, unconscious, having seizures. And my legs were on top of each other, wedged underneath my bed. And for those of you who have seen some of my good night tweets, where I tweet a picture from bed, my bed is made of wood. Other than the mattress, there's a big headboard, and then the frame, everything is wood. And that bed is really heavy. I've had to move it many times. And I'm strong, but it's backbreaking. So they went into action immediately, and Cheryl called 911, and my roommate lifted that bed off of me because he's like He-Man. And he pulled me out from underneath, and an ambulance came and took me to the hospital. And there I was put into a medically induced coma and onto a ventilator. And I stayed that way for the next 3 days. And no one knew whether or not I would live or die. Thankfully, I lived. And after 3 days, I was well enough for them to take me off to bring me up from the coma, take me off the ventilator. And they asked me a series of questions, and I knew the answers to every one of them, thankfully, which meant my brain function was intact. But I kept stammering. Every time I tried to speak that whole day, I would just stammer and stammer and stammer. I've never done that before. It was very frustrating. And I told everybody, I was like, I'm going to stop this GD stammering. And I did by the next day. No longer stammered. Probably out of sheer will. Hit my table. Sorry about that. I never claimed to make these videos perfect, y'all. I would try to make them a little better every day. But again, I digress. After 5 days, I was discharged. And I went home. And my roommate did everything he could to help me around the house. And my sister Cheryl came by at least twice a day with food. And when she would come in the evening, she would stay for a while because by then my roommate had gone to work. And it was nice having company. And even though my roommate usually slept all day until he had to get up to get ready for work, he would get up and spend a lot of time with me then too. I know the experience of me nearly dying really frightened him. And he showed me a whole lot of appreciation for me still being around. And I hope he knows how much I appreciate him. He will, especially once he watches this video. After about 3 weeks from the time I came home, I had made a full recovery, which still blows my mind that I got well so quickly. Checking my time here. Another thing that happened, and if you're like me, if you've ever nearly died, or if you actually clinically died but were revived, if you're like me, two things in particular happened. First, it greatly diminished my fear of death. Didn't take it away. There are certain healthy fears we need, including a healthy fear of death, so that we don't do so many foolish things that might kill us otherwise if we had no fear. But too much fear, in my opinion anyway, greatly diminishes our quality of life. And I'm a big proponent for quality over quantity. Hopefully I'll have both. Hopefully all of you will have both. But quality, at least a little, is best. If you had to pick. If I had to pick, anyway. But we'll see. Hopefully, like I said, I will live a long, very long, happy life. The second thing is, I developed this great heightened appreciation for life itself, and also for my life in particular, and all the people I love. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that I had this greatened, I really appreciated the people I don't care for, because that didn't happen. That stayed the same. But for the people I like and I love who are in my life, I just like and love them so much more, bordering on worship. And, the things about my life and my pets and my house, etc. I love and appreciate all of that much more. And I love that I'm doing things now, 16 months later, that I just never would have done before. I was never on Twitter before. And I was never on YouTube before. And it's been 16 months since this happened. And the new has not worn off of any of this. And I'm grateful for that too. So again, I want to thank my sister Cheryl. And before I do that, I want to mention that, I've always been a very positive person. Even when I was a teen, I was positive. I was about 1 part angst and maybe 2 parts sunshine. Or maybe 45, 55. And as an adult, I've always been very upbeat. But the Lynn Broughton that y'all know and love, the really positive man that I am, he is the result of me almost dying. So I'm grateful for that too. And before I forget, let me thank again my sister Cheryl, my roommate, the EMTs, the entire ICU staff of Palestine Regional Medical Center, and God for keeping me on earth and giving me another chance at this life, because I really love it. So that's my list. I hope you enjoyed it. As I've mentioned several times, I will continue to make many, 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 many more of these videos throughout the duration of Lynn Loves You. So please keep sending me your stories of when someone helped you, rescued you, saved you, We're your hero. And also because I am finally going to start making the flip side of these gratitude videos. That would be the times that you were someone's helper, rescuer, savior, hero. So please do not hesitate. Do not be too humble to send me examples and stories and anecdotes of when you were these things to somebody else. Thank you. Now, before I close, because I have about 7 minutes, so I want to race through this. Before I close, I want to mention to you 3 things that I've already told you about yourself many times, but will continue to every single video. First, you are very important to a lot of people, including people who are very important to you. And you also matter a whole lot. Again, you matter a whole lot to people who matter a whole lot to you too. Also, and I think this is the biggest truth of them all, and certainly the most wonderful, is you are very well loved and adored by a whole lot of people, including lots of people who love you a whole lot and adore you a whole lot. And I want you to please be one of those who loves you a whole lot. And one of those people who worships you. There's nothing wrong with that. People say there is, they're wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think there are a lot of things right about self-love. Absolutely. You're worth it. So please think about that, meditate on that. Let it, not just today, but from today on, let it saturate your mind and your heart and your soul and your spirit until when you look in the mirror, you see the perfect work of beauty that you are. And let that knowledge fill you with an abundance, a great abundance of wonderful, well-deserved self-confidence so that you carry yourself like the perfect work of beauty you are and the great, big, gorgeous giant that you are. From here on out, everywhere you go. And when I say this, I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about conceit. I'm not talking about cocksure. Don't worry about being those things. You're never, ever, ever going to be arrogant, conceited, or cocky. You're too good, too nice to ever be those ugly things. I'm talking about wonderful, well-deserved self-confidence and an abundance of it. So let me ask you for 3 favors, and I am really going to have to say this fast. First, please like this video and do it right now. Every time my videos get a like, I get a dose of self-confidence, and my videos are seen by a lot more people. Second, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to Lynn Loves You, and do that right now. Be subscriber number 209. My current goal is 300, then 400, 500, down to 1,000 and beyond, so that I can be monetized by YouTube and begin making a living at doing this. I consider this to be my career and my job, and I do want to make money at doing it. I will do it for free as long as I have to because I love it. Eventually, I am going to set up a Patreon account too. So between being monetized and having the Patreon account, my big goal is to make not only a living, but a great living. I can't do that without you and your help, and I wouldn't want to even if I could. Not even if I could. Now, one more thing. Please follow me on Twitter. My handle is Lynn Broughton4. That's Lynn Broughton and the number 4. And I'm tweeting a whole lot more these days. So I can promise you that at least once a day, I'll put a smile on your face with my ultra positive, super upbeat, Absolutely exuberant. I'm very exuberant these days. Tweets that are very sunshiny and sweet and gooey like me. I am really just like my tweets. I'm my tweets personified, really. I am very positive, very upbeat, exuberant, sunshiny, and yes, very gooey. Gooey sweet. And a lot of people love me like this, and I'm coming to love myself this way too. I am surely way too much for some folks, but not everybody's going to like me, and I accept that. So until next time, this has been Lynn Loves You, and I'm your host, Lynn Broughton, and I love you. And let's meet this way again very soon. Thank you for watching.